Welcome. This is the NLP today, and I said I was going to talk about like an NLP induction. And what do I mean by an NLP induction? Uh, well, NLP in and of itself is a hypnotic process, if you will, as is all communication. You're just trying to bypass the critical factors of the mind. And when I say NLP kind of based induction, um, I mean doing what you're going to do without formally going, take a deep breath, close your eyes, right? Because if I have one complaint with the old school hypnosis training, which when I haven't done hypnosis training in a couple of years, but when I do traditional hypnosis training, I absolutely positively refuse to teach depth levels or depths of trance, right? Because it's not measurable, it's not real. Whether you one with like 6 levels, like they teach at the NGH a couple schools, and same with like Elman, kind of like the 6 level thing. I mean, it's all over the board. And the reason, I clash with that is whatever they say, like you need to be in a certain level of trance to experience anesthesia or analgesia on your hand. Like I think in that old model, it was level 3, right? And yet, every day we see examples of people ignoring pain, which is what it would be, not feeling it because they're too busy doing something else, right? As maybe some people here can relate to. Reed probably can, is people that they play an entire game with a broken arm, a broken hand, because they're locked in on what they're doing, right? And so they're not feeling the pain. The classic line from Predator, right? I ain't got time to bleed, right? It's like you lock in, you're doing it. So we do that all the time. We experience that, and then the 2 deeper levels of trance they talk about, like having a negative hallucination, not seeing something that's there, or a positive hallucination, seeing something that's not there, so negatively or positively hallucinating. People do that all the time, right? I mean, you do it wide awake. It's like you don't have to be in a level of trance, especially if it's set up right, right? You ever go see a really scary movie and even though you're in a concrete bunker, safe and secure, or in your house, everything's fine, right? And then you watch a really scary movie, you'll start, if you hear a little sound, suddenly you'll see something that's not there, right? So you'll literally scare the crap out of yourself, right? Or how many times you don't see something that's there. You ever had the I can't find my keys. I can't find my keys. And then, like, especially if you have a significant other, you're convinced they hid it, right? You're convinced they hid it. And then you ask them where it is, and they go, they're right there, right? Of course, I accuse my wife of palming it and dropping it down. But, we do this all the time, right? So we positively, negatively hallucinate, and we do anesthesia. We do memory blocks where you can't remember things. That's, where you try to remember something that you can't remember, a word, a name, a face. So anyway, it happens all the time. And a lot of it is in the setup. And to me, that's what an NLP based induction would be, right? If I'm going to do a classic induction, my 2 favorite inductions classically would be the Dave Elman, right? It's just set up pretty much nice. I like that one. And the other one I like to use if I'm going to do a traditional one is the blackboard induction. Those are the 2 I like. I like because they have your brain doing different things, right? But even those you could do with an NLP based approach, right? And then the way I would attack it, if you want to do like why would you do an NLP based induction? Well, you want to get them to a certain frame of mind, then do an NLP technique without going into formal trance, not having to say, close your eyes and go through all that. But if you get them in the right preset, right, And then you do an NLP technique based on whatever it is that they're doing at the time, right? And you just do the NLP technique conversationally without formally having them do it, right? And so, and I would set it up this way with something, you know, I've been doing for a few years. This was kind of sharpened by a friend of mine. Him and I kind of talked about it and worked on it. It's called Levels of Trance. Mr. Billy Schilling and I we were doing that. And it's basically that any given moment in time, you're in a certain level of trance, right? And when you're in that level of trance, your brain locks into certain things that you're doing because of the level of consciousness. Let's not use trance, let's use level of consciousness, right? And the three levels that we're constantly bouncing between, is in the first level of trance or consciousness. I should change that but it works good because I call it the HOT model, right? The HOC model doesn't sound as good, come to think of it. HOC, I like HOT, it's the HOC, right? So the first level is when you're in an experience, when you're totally in an experience. When you're in an experience, the outside world can disappear, right? It can be something from like a sport, you're engrossed in a movie or a book, naturally a really good meal. I mean, there's nothing going on except what's happening. A really good conversation. A good time to think about getting that kind of experience too is when you first fall in love, right? When you first fall in love, right? All you see is your object of desire, right? Which closely mimics an addiction. Right? Some of your objects of desire in the love market end up being an addiction that destroys your life, but that's another story for another day, right? So, but I mean, it kind of like, which is fine. You know, I mean, you hear athletes talk about, got to get my head in the game. Performers, actors talk about being in the zone, in the moment. You know, you actually, I've been blessed to have it happen a few times. And actors talk about chasing singers too, where the cameras, if you're on set, the cameras disappear. Movie sets are weird, right? Because it's busy. There's all this shit going on, and you're in this this intense moment. But when you hit it, everything disappears. I was watching an actor, Adam Driver, who I really like, right? And a Marine, right? A real veteran, not a pretend one. And he's to me, a very good actor. But he was talking about he was in the reboot of Star Wars, and they were asking about the scene where he killed Han Solo, his dad, right? And then, was that a hard scene to do and all this? I'm sitting there watching just as an actor and go, wow, and he kind of said that. It's like, I don't know, we were playing the moment. He goes, but when it all clicked in, everything disappeared, right? The director, all the stage crew, they were pretty much it was a set, but with a lot of green screen around it. You got to be in an altered state to make this real, if you follow what I'm saying, right? And then, like he said, once he got into it, he wasn't looking at, Harrison Ford, the guy that did, Indiana Jones and all these really good movies. He was in the moment, and he was making the decision that he had to kill his father. That was it. That's all I kept. Everything disappeared but that moment. And that's being in that level of trance. Addictions is that first level, whether you want to call it obsession, compulsion, the addictive phase where it's like, all you can see is the drink, the drug, whatever it is, right? So that's the first level. And every level is useful somewhere, right? But then the second level of trance or of consciousness is when you pull out of that and you think about the experience, right? Like if you're in an obsession to eat, you open the refrigerator. This just happened to me last night or the night before. Open the refrigerator and I was looking in there, and I asked but I was like, I thought I was hungry. And then something made me pull out of it. And I was just like, I was like watching myself in a way going, am I really hungry? Or am I just kind of bored? You know, with the kind of bored, right? And then you can make a different decision. When you pull back to the first level, you can say, am I really hungry or am I bored? Am I angry? You know, whatever it is. Am I thirsty? That first level of disassociation, right? Which can help you make a change. Now, it can be a good thing, but it can also drop in to be a problem. Like, again, you know, we played high performance sports. You can't think about the game when the game's going on too much. I mean, you got to be in the game. You got to do whatever you got to do. Throw the pass, you know, make the block. You got to play the moment, right? Performers talk about getting into the moment, right? Whether it's singing or dancing, right? So each level is good. You know, the first level, you're in the experience. Second level, you're thinking about it. The third level is you double disassociate, where you think about thinking about it. So if this would, it didn't happen the other night, but if I'd have been at the refrigerator, pull back going, am I hungry? You know, or am I tired? Or am I upset? And then I can make a change. But if sometimes you can even pull back one more level, become double disassociated and say, well, why am I angry? Why am I upset? Right? So I'm thinking about the thinking. It's, you know, each level is going on a little bit more meta, as we would call it, right? So now you're thinking about, well, you know, what's leading me to be angry, upset, depressed, to think I want to, like, you know, have a candy bar or, you know, whatever it is, right? And so each level is good, right? But sometimes we have to put people in an experience, right? And then pull them out of it. A classic induction that puts you in the experience is a progressive relaxation. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, focus your attention on your toes, put your mind in your toe, all that, right? It puts you in your body. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And then other traditional things pull you out of it, where you're thinking and your body disappears. That's what the blackboard induction is. See a circle, you know, on it, or see a blackboard or a whiteboard, draw a circle, draw an X in the circle. I mean, a classic one of those is you're having the person think about it, right? And then you add, you know, traditional blackboard induction, you know, write and erase each letter of the alphabet in turn in the circle on the board. And with each number you write and erase, you become more relaxed and more at ease. So you're pulling them out. The body kind of goes over here and you're keeping the mind preoccupied with the writing and erasing letters, numbers, whatever it is you're having them do. But if you bounce back and forth between being in the experience and out of the experience, in the experience and out of the experience, it's a little bit disorienting and it puts you into trance, right? It's kind of what the Dave Ellman does, the classic Dave Ellman with the fractionalization and all this stuff going on, right? So, you know, if you're in your body, then you have to pull back and think about it, you know, and do things. You can do that. You can do this conversation, right? And then if you do that a couple of times with the conversation, it's a little bit disoriented. And even with their eyes open, right, they'll enter into that altered state, right? And I'm not going to do this bullshit where I've heard these people say, then I'm really tracking the micro eye movements and the blood flow in the face. I'm like, that shit drives me. I think it's just, well, I've already said it. I think it's bullshit. I think it's hard to track that closely, right? Because if I'm tracking that closely, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing. If I'm really in the experience, as Milton Erickson would say, I'm just going with it, right? But you'll notice the little thing. They'll just they'll get a, what's it called? See, I'm just having it, where they just get that neutral face expression. Right? Like it's a mask, but it just goes like this. And their pupil, if you could see it, I never really noticed pupils dilating. I just know their eyes quit moving. This is what I'll notice. Right? And their breathing slows down because hopefully your breathing slowing down. They're going to track you. Right? So if you kind of put them in the experience and out of the experience a couple times, and maybe go in the experience, out of the experience, think about the experience, and then do that a couple times, then segue that. Once you get that done, then you segue that into you could do a little bit more formal relaxation, or just do an NLP technique, you know, a visual squash, a new behavior generator, a swish pattern, whatever it is, right? You can just do that with conversation as you're sitting there talking, right? And then put them back into the experience, taking with it, as Erickson would say, the resources that your subconscious mind gained. So that's kind of how you would set it up, right? Yeah. So let's do an example. It's December 6th. It's Christmas time, right? I should cue up, you know, what's the song we hear the shit out of at Christmas? It's in every Hallmark movie. Mariah Carey and that. All I want for Christmas is you. Right? It's like, I like the song, by the way. But what happens at Christmas, right? Well, a lot of people, they overeat at Christmas because you can, right? It's there. People bring shit out. They justify horrible eating behaviors. Just worked with somebody on that, right? Somebody called and paid for a booster session because it's the holiday season and they work. They're in the public eye, and so they go to a lot of places. And of course, now they put in the sweets and all this other stuff, right? So it's easy to get off kilter off a healthy eating pattern, right? Even though all the research says the best time of the year to start a major change and keep it, especially in weight loss and addictions, is right now. Right around between Thanksgiving and New Year's, right? Because if you can make it through this time, everything begins to, you know, cycle off, right? And people use the time of year to justify overeating, drinking too much, whatever the bad habit is. Also, at the same time, they'll use the holidays as an excuse not to work out, right? It's like, well, you know, I don't know, life doesn't stop, right? And even though intellectually we know it's all bullshit, we'll use it as an excuse not to work out. And so think about that, right? And I'm not sure, maybe you're having an issue with one of those, maybe both of those, right? A lot of us can do one really well and maybe not the other well, right? For some of us, I work with people like, they like to work out. Going to work out is easy. That part's easy. They'll find the time, they'll make the time, you know, that's easy. But then but on the flip side of that, they'll turn that into a problem or a justification that, like, you know, I'm working out hard. I can eat the cake, you know, right? I'm working out hard. I can have whatever's going on that I probably shouldn't be doing. Okay, great, right? Other people, they can control their eating, okay, but you know, they'll just totally stop working out, right? They'll even use, this lady used the excuse, and the reason she called me, it was kind of funny. Well, she was, yeah, I was just saying I can't go work out because the health club's crowded. And I'm like, well, did you go check? Because actually it slows down because everybody's like you. They're trying to use this as an excuse to quit working out, right? And so maybe you have one of those, maybe you have both of those. And of course, I still do work with addictions. And of course, you know, there's more alcohol than offered at this time of year because it's, you know, and it's in our DNA, it's in our culture that, you know, we share drink and we share food, right? But it doesn't mean you have to do it. So, you know, what I'd like you to do is think about if one of those is an issue, maybe eating too much, you know, cheating on your, if you want to call it diet, right? or healthy eating, whatever you want to call it. Think about those times where you got into that experience and, there was cookies, there was cake, there was whatever it is that like might trigger you and you're in there, right? And if you can imagine that, right? If you can pull back and think about, is this an excuse that I'm using, right? That I'm going to pay for later, right? And then you can make the cognitive choice that I'll do it. I don't care. How I look doesn't matter. I'm lying to myself, but just take responsibility for the truth behind the matter, right? Or maybe you could pull back one more level and think, if I want to look the way I want to look, is where I'm standing there right now, looking at the refrigerator or the dessert tray, if I'm at a function, right? If I want to look the way I want to look as I'm standing there looking at that, those two are mutually exclusive. I can't eat that crap and look the way I want to look, and maybe you could get an example in your mind that might, make you think different. And this lady talked about what made her think about it is what on Thanksgiving, there's all those desserts there, and she was partaking a little too much. And then the football, it was at a family function, and she didn't want to be rude, but then the football game was on, and Dolly Parton was at the halftime show, right? 77 years old, and she was in a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader outfit, and she looked as good as the young girls. And she goes, that made me pull out of what I was doing and realize if I want to look the way I want to look at whatever age, I can't do this. I can't eat this way. And then it's a cognitive choice, and then I can say, it's not that important to me, right? But if it is that important to you, then you can make that choice. So as you're in the experience, sometimes you got to pull all the way back out and go back in. It was the same with other people about exercise. It's a great time to start an exercise program. Gyms are a little bit lighter if you're a gym person. And even if they're crowded with people that are serious. That are people that are making the time because, holidays are real. You have family functions, you have other things going on. And so it's fun to be around that. So, and the same thing, if you pull back out of I'm tired, I don't feel like working out, the gym's crowded. If you pull back and go, well, you don't know if the gym's crowded or not because you haven't checked, right? And even if it's crowded, there's still something you can do. I mean, you can get on the treadmill. If the treadmills are full, you can lift weights, whatever. It's whatever kind of health club it is, there's stuff that you can do. And there is something about, when you're in that experience, you need to pull back and think about what does I want my future to be? What do I want my future to be? Because there's a thing in psychology that you default to your circumstances and the way you think. That's, I would call it your default future. If you don't make a conscious choice to decide how you want to look and your energy level and all of those things, you'll default to the people around you, right? You will default to the people around you. And, I live in an area of the country where there's a lot of money in certain places. Right? But one thing I've noticed when I'm around usually the parts of the area where people have a little bit more resources, they look good in their 50s and 60s and 70s, right? Not all, but they look a little better, right? And, that's, if I want that in my mind, I don't want the default future of the people walk around with the paunches, right? And the Walmart look, right? And, it's like, I don't want to be that way. It was Jim Rohn, when you're in that experience, Jim Rohn was one that talked about pull back and think about the fact that, the 5 people you hang around with the most, your income level is probably somewhere in that circle of where those people are, right? Probably in an average, right? And he was just theorizing. Now we know that's true. But if it's true, and if we're talking about like physical things, in shape people, somewhere in that circle of friends are in shape people. That's the people they default their future to, right? And even within that, you can get very, very structured. This guy I was talking to, because he was asking me a question, and he goes, I see a lot of these guys work out. They work out their whole lives. They're older. They live in Florida. They're retired, and you could tell they're in shape, but they got this paunch going. And he goes, I didn't want that to be my future. I didn't want to have nice arms and be, good shape, like chest look good, back arms, but have this paunch. And he goes, that's where I had to pull back and think, well, I'm not going to do what they're doing. Right. And so he started asking the guys, what are you doing? Well, most of them hadn't changed their workouts for 20 or 30 years. Well, you know, they're not in their 30s now, they're in their 60s or 70s. So he changed how he worked out, you know, and he went and got pictures of people, men, since he's a guy, and let's be politically correct, and he identifies as a guy. Can I say that? But you know, so he got picture guy, you know, older men in great shape in their late 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? So you have fun guys with the six pack and he's like, that's what I want my future to be, right? And so he would pull back, and before he works out, he looks at this picture and goes, you know what? My body can do this. He's given his body the permission. My body can do this, right? And then he would go and do the workout. So maybe you can be in the experience and pull back and think about, what do I want, right? And then you have to really look at what's stopping you from getting to that future. You know, as you relax and as you look to that future, if you want to set the future you want and not have a default future, as it's called, where you default to the norm, right? Well, you have to first be willing to stand out, you know, to be different, you know, when the day after that football game with Dolly Parton, there were all these people slamming, well, it's easy for her. She's super uber wealthy and this, and this. And I'm going, well, you know, when you're rich, you could use the other way. She could still sell out a concert if she weighed 300 pounds. I mean, nobody would care. She's Dolly Parton. So what you would say is easy, actually go the other way. And not to be mean, but you could look at Oprah, who's worth more money, you know, and Oprah in her own right would say she's not willing to do the little things it takes to look a certain way. But not everybody has, you know, maybe they have the part of them that holds them back from wanting to be different. They need to be part of the norm. Maybe it comes from a family of origin. You know, a lot of people were told as kids, you know, don't draw attention to yourself, you know, kind of blend in. You know, the tall poppies get cut down, or the tall flowers get whatever that saying is. Right? So maybe, or you had a superstar in the family and you were kind of, you were told not to deflect the attention from your superstar sister, brother, whatever it happens to be. So you have that part of you that doesn't want to stand out and be different, right? Which is clashing with the part of you that wants to look the way you want to look, have the energy level you want to look, you know, to be the person you want to be, you know, to be the sexy grandma, to be the sexy grandpa, to be the person that is in great shape, not great shape for their age. Strike that from the record, right? It's not that hard to be in great shape and to look better than 90% of the population, right? Just walk around, Jesus Christ. Where was I? Somewhere, and it was all high school and college. Oh, the football game. I was going to, like, Jesus, a lot of these people look like shit. You know, it's like, not to, you know, so. The athletes look good. The athletes, they're in the state championship. They look like what you'd expect. They look like, something like 12 guys on the team got Division I scholarships. So they're good athletes and they're in shape, right? But I was looking at everybody else. I'm like, this is interesting. So do you want to stand out and be different? Because again, that's in your DNA. Part of that's in your DNA. You want to stay in the tribe. You want to stay in the village. You want to stay in the family. Because 1,000 years ago, if you got thrown out of the tribe, the village, the family, it was a death sentence. Right? Now there's always more tribes. You know, we're not like stuck with the tribe that we have. Create your own tribe. There's a reason why some of these older actors and actresses look great, right? And yes, they have resources, but they put in the effort. But they're hanging around with people their age that are in great shape, right? When you see them, that's Kevin Costner is hanging around with Kurt Russell and these guys they're not young, but they're in great shape, right? And they say that's it. Well, it's part of that default future, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is, do I want that default future? Is that part of me strong enough to reassure the part of me that's fighting it that it's okay? Right? Yeah, you may lose some of this tribe, as I would say, to pull back a level, this is what I have to do with addiction. When we talk about addictions, people in rehab, it's like, hey, you're going to have to get new playmates and playpens, the ultimate 12-step saying, right? You're going to have to get new playmates and playpens. You're not going to go to the bar and hang around or go and hang out with the guys that are, now you used to have to sneak out to smoke a joint. Now it's legal, right? But you're going to have to create a new tribe, a new group, whether that's a 12-step group, whether that's a group that's just not in their behavior, whatever it happens to be, you need to do that, right? But you can reassure yourself that once you make that change and you become that person you truly want to be, a lot of that old group, you don't have to worry about leaving them. They don't want you around, right? They don't want you around because it challenges their model of the world that they're fat and miserable or drunk or whatever change they can't make, right? When you become the example, it's like, I don't want you around, right? And then, maybe that part of you has the ultimate ideal that you want to be the kind of person that somebody else would say, oh, it's just easy for them. And take that as a compliment. When someone says, oh, it's just easy for you, you're just genetically gifted, right? Usually people that say that have never walked in a health club, let alone worked out, have never said no to that second piece of pie, right? It's easier just to say it, well, there's just some people it's easy for. And it may be true, it might be a little easier for other people, right? But, as Bruce Lee says, long-term consistency will always beat short-term intensity, right? Most people get real intense. I'm going to work out, and they work out real hard for maybe 2 weeks, right? And then they quit, and then they occasionally work out, and it doesn't work. But if you're consistent, right, and to get to that it's a consistent basis, right? When we first started, we were kidding around and talking about, somebody mentioned Captain America, and I was watching an interview he did years ago when they were making all those movies, and he said, he finally figured out after like the second movie, it was easier just to stay in shape between movies than it was to try to go get in shape to do the movie, right? To not, and that, like anybody who follows sports, you don't even have to be that big a fan. People talk about the average career of like a lot of the NFL guys and the elite performers. They're performing great in their 30s and 40s that we didn't see when we were growing up, right? And one of the people interviewed they were talking to was Tom Brady, right? I'm a Raider fan. He's not my favorite guy, even though now he's part owner of the Raiders. He said, I think he said it was in his second or third year, he figured out he was never going to stop training because he would see guys that would get out of shape in the offseason, then come in and get in shape for the season and then get hurt. Right? Now those guys, they just train and they're making enough, but they train consistently all year round. And those are the guys, he said, that's the ones I saw that were having those careers that, injuries are going to happen. And he said it changed. He used exercise first and foremost, not just for his playing career, but to prevent injury in every aspect of his life. And I thought that was an interesting reframe, right? That the number one goal of working out it is to look the way you want to look and have that, but it also stops injuries, right? Because your joints are stronger, your muscles are stronger, or if you do get, you hear these examples of, athletes that get into car wrecks and they'll say, well, the doctor told them, that probably what saved me was the fact I was in great shape. Right. So anyway, so I'm not sure if that part of you is strong enough right now, or maybe in the very near future, right, to overcome this fear of standing out. Begin to realize that once you stand out, you draw a different tribe, you draw a different group around you, right? And that's okay. And so, and so as you bounce into being in those moments of where you're totally focused on what's going on, and if it's something negative, it's easy to pull back and experience it and then think about, well, what do I really want? And it clashes with if I do this right now, the short-term positive will not get me to where I truly want to go long-term, right? And it's a lot easier than to say no thank you to yourself first and the other second. Once you say no to yourself, the others become easy. Right? And so, whether it's saying no to that, the cookies, the cakes, the second servings, or alcohol, whatever, if you're trying to make a change, it'll all work. But first you have to say no to yourself. Say no, mean no, and actually enjoy it. Like, nah, I don't, because you don't need it. And then once you get to that, things begin to change. Right? And so as you're coming back and thinking about that, we've had that experience. I was at a conference a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was. I lose track of time. And it was on a Sunday morning. And a few people there were talking about getting a coffee and talking about how much fun they had the night before. And a couple people mentioned they didn't remember it. It was Vegas, right? So, there's a lot of that. And it was between the drinking and, now that Vegas has more marijuana outlets than any other part of the country. So, but they were laughing and joking, and I'm like, that's cool, and they go, yeah, you didn't go. I said, no, I didn't go. And one person said, well, they say, like, they kind of feel sorry for me. I'm like, they go, yeah, because, something about having fun. And, part of me, the male ego wants to go, first of all, I don't think you guys even know how to drink. If you want to know my honest to God opinion. You're sitting here having fucking coffee. If you were hardcore, you'd be downstairs having a goddamn drink. That's what my brain wanted to say, right? But I was thinking about the future self I want to be. And I said, actually, it's the opposite. I feel sorry for you guys because that's the only way you know how to, and there's no behavior that alcohol makes better in my life, whether if I choose to go gamble, dance, have sex, whatever it is, alcohol's it's not gonna make it any better. And you guys, unfortunately, you don't know that. So shall we say I'll never go back to that conference, but it's like, do you want to be the person you want to be, right? And so that's just my opinion, and that's an NLP technique. In there was a little bit of a visual squash. The part of you that wants to do this, the part of you that is afraid to stand out and be this person. We went into the experience, pulled back out of the experience, pulled back up here into the experience. If you rewatch it, it's just, it's, I don't know, I wasn't keeping track. It was probably about 20 minutes, right? But just from the little pictures I could see, people were, I would say, entering into a slightly altered state. Again, we can't measure it. I mean, I guess we could if we, it's kind of like when they send you in for the sleep analysis. They wire you up and put your mask on. You say, now sleep normal. Okay. So, but yeah, so it's kind of fun. So that's an NLP based induction with a technique. I'll be teaching a class in this in January, I think. And I'm also going to do a basic and then a trainer's training starting in January. I'm just trying to set up the times if people are interested in that. Wherever you're watching this, make sure you like and subscribe and reach out to nfnlp.com. The schedule will be there, or my other site, hortonpsychology.com, for more information.